All right, everybody, it says we're live, so hopefully I am coming through. What I wanted to talk about today is something that used to haunt every single second of my childhood. I grew up in the South where there is a lot of like really deeply ingrained, like we used to call it born again. People now call it fundamentalist, whatever, that kind of thinking, whatever label you want to put on it, where people took the Bible literally and they were waiting for like the return of Jesus to happen at any moment. And they believed that when this happened, people were going to come busting up out of the graves and they're going to fly off into the clouds and they're going to live in cities where the streets are literally made of gold. They did not believe any of this stuff was metaphor. So, that being everywhere around me played a tremendous role in like my thinking when I was a child. And I went around waiting for it all the time. I think a lot of people did. Like we believed it could happen at any second, any moment. And we were always waiting for it, watching for signs. And, it was having to go through magic and internal alchemy and Zen that made me understand what this stuff really means. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. Like when I was a kid, they used to call it the rapture. It's a word that's not actually in the Bible, but that's like a term that they use to cover everything that it says is going to happen in the end times, like the return of Jesus, going up into the clouds, all that stuff. All of it falls under the category of the rapture. So I wrote something trying to articulate exactly what this stuff really means. I talked in the past about maybe writing a magician's Bible or an alchemist's Bible or, something in that vein and just never got around to it and don't know if I honestly will anymore. But this is a piece of writing that would fall into this category. And it would be tied in very closely to the book of Revelations. But this piece was titled The Rapture and the Alchemical Body of Light. When I was a child, I grew up in the shadow of fear. I lived in the American South, where fundamentalist preachers never seemed to run out of warnings about fire, brimstone, and the end of the world. One of the darkest clouds hanging over my childhood was their obsession with the rapture. They spoke about it constantly in church and on television. It wasn't some distant prophecy. It was treated like something that could erupt at any second without warning. One moment you'd be walking home from school, and the next the sky would split open. The righteous would vanish, leaving only piles of clothes on the ground where their bodies had been. Planes would fall from the sky as Christian pilots were taken. Cars would slam into each other on the highway when drivers disappeared mid-journey. And those of us who weren't good enough, who hadn't prayed the right way or been forgiven for the right sins, we would all be left behind to endure a world collapsing into horror. For a child, for me, this was absolutely terrifying. I lived with a constant fear that I might wake up one morning and find my family gone, caught up into the clouds, while I had been left behind to burn. Fundamentalism thrived on that fear. It was meant to break you down, to keep you obedient, to keep you from looking for any other kind of salvation other than what they were selling. But here's the strange thing. They weren't wrong about the rapture being something that could happen at any moment. They were only wrong about what it actually was. Because the rapture is real, just not in the way they thought. The fundamentalist vision of the rapture is literalist to the point of absurdity. Corpses rise from the graves. People levitate into the sky. Believers are whisked away to mansions in the clouds, while everyone else just suffers. It's a cosmic lottery, a supernatural evacuation plan, and it leaves you living in dread of being left behind. That kind of teaching distorts the heart of what the book of Revelation is about. It externalizes a process that was always meant to be internal. It's something that takes place inside you. It takes an alchemical truth, the transformation of consciousness, and projects it onto the stage of history like a bad play. Instead of awakening the soul, it shackles the psyche with fear. When I was young, that fear sank deep into my bones. It shaped how I saw the world. It made me feel unsafe every single moment because catastrophe could come crashing down from the heavens without any warning. The irony is that the rapture really is something that can happen in the blink of an eye, but it isn't about being sucked into the sky. It's about being pulled out of illusion. So, what does the rapture mean in alchemy? Through the alchemical lens, the rapture is not about physical bodies vanishing. It's about consciousness being caught up, lifted into its true state. Alchemy has always spoken of three stages of embodiment: the terrestrial body, the lunar body, and the solar body. The terrestrial body is the one we're all born into, heavy, bound by instinct and confusion, tossed about by time and circumstance. The lunar body forms when we begin spiritual work. The ego, self, the reflective consciousness shaped through ritual, imagination, and devotion. But the solar body is the goal, the immortal body of light, crystallized presence, the part of us that is eternal and indestructible. What Revelation calls the rapture is the transition from lunar to solar. It is the moment when consciousness dissolves out of the egoic self and coagulates into the eternal self. In Christian mystical language, that is the resurrection body. In alchemical terms, it's the philosopher's stone, embodiment. The rapture is not a kind of evacuation, it's transmutation. The old formula of alchemy, solve et coagula, dissolve and recombine, is the key to understanding this. The old self is dissolved. Everything that once defined you, the fears, the attachments, the endless cycle of distraction and grasping, all of it burns away. What dissolves is not your body, but your identification with limitation. And then, through the fire of presence, something new crystallizes. Consciousness rooted in eternity, the solar body. When fundamentalists spoke of people vanishing, they took a symbol literally. What vanishes is the false self. What vanishes is the illusion that you are separate from the divine. What vanishes is the constant need to be saved by anything outside of yourself. That vanishing really does feel like the ground of reality splitting open. One moment you're lost in time and in terror. The next, you're lifted into presence. You stand in the eternal now, and you know beyond doubt that you can't be destroyed. This is the rapture. When we look at the rapture through this lens, it becomes something deeply practical. It's not a one-time cosmic event reserved for the end of history. It's a state of consciousness available to anyone, right here and right now, if you do the work. Every moment you step into embodied presence, you're caught up. Every time you stop grasping at the past or the future and fully inhabit this breath, this step, this heartbeat, you are taken into the kingdom of God. Every time the veil of illusion drops away and you see life as it truly is, the rapture has occurred. This is why Revelation insists that no one knows the day or the hour, because it isn't about a date on a calendar. It's about the moment you wake up, and that moment is always right now. For me, reframing the rapture through alchemy has been a way of redeeming the shadow it cast over my childhood. I no longer see it as a threat of sudden abandonment, but as a promise of sudden awakening. The rapture doesn't mean being snatched out of life. It means being plunged so deeply into life that you realize there was never anything to fear. It isn't about leaving the world. It's about finally seeing the world for what it truly is: divine radiant, and whole. The old fear-driven version made me dread every second. The alchemical version makes every second sacred. The rapture is happening right now in the simple miracle of being aware, breathing, being present. Read this way, the book of Revelation is not a prophecy of destruction, but a manual of transformation. It describes, in the language of visions and symbols, what happens when the inner apocalypse arrives, when the old world of illusion collapses and the new world of presence is revealed. The seven seals, the trumpets, the beasts, they're not events in history, but initiations in consciousness. And the rapture is the moment of fulfillment, when the soul dissolves into its source and coagulates as something eternal. The literalists were right about one thing. It can happen at any moment, just not in the way they thought. It doesn't mean the end of the world. It means the end of your world, the end of your illusions, the end of your exile from the present moment. So in conclusion, when I was a child, the rapture terrified me. It was painted like an ambush, a cosmic trapdoor that could open without warning and erase everything I loved. It took years to undo that fear, but alchemy taught me to see it differently. The rapture is not about corpses rising from graves or believers flying into the clouds. It's about the lifting of consciousness into the eternal now. It is the final initiation, the moment when the work succeeds, and it is available in every single breath. The rapture is presence, embodied presence. It's the moment you stop running, stop waiting, stop clinging to anything outside yourself, and realize that you're already home. That's what the preachers were missing. They turned it into fear. But what it was really always about was freedom. And that freedom is here, now, waiting for each and every one of us to notice it and step into it. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being in my life. I don't take that for granted or lightly. I appreciate you guys being part of my world. I will talk to you in a couple of days. Have a good night.